Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today we're going to tell a horror story. Ooh, spooky. But it's a very real story. All of it has happened. None of the names have been changed, and there are no innocent. Because on this very day in 1985, the Bored Housewives of Washington, D.C. declared war on the music industry when they formed an organization shrouded in mystery called the Parent Music Resource Council, the PMRC. Now, the PMRC had no purpose of any importance, but if they fully got their way, and they ended up sort of partly getting their way, it would have been absolutely a disaster for music. It ended up sort of backfiring, but it would have, of course, been better if it never happened at all. But the beast known as censorship does rear its hideous head every decade or so, and it takes different forms. It shapeshifts, as some would say. Yeah, so angry. Love the guy. But it's always there. It's omnipresent, and therefore people who believe in liberty and freedom need to always be on guard against it. Now, a lot of censorship begins in a manner that's sort of half silly and half terrifying, because the music that they pointed out as worthy of censorship is stuff that, not only by today's standards, but even by the standards of the 80s, was mainstream and relatively tame. Although they sort of cast their net wide and eventually wanted to censor everything, they started out by attacking what they called the Filthy 15. And I don't have that up in front of me, but I'm going to get that up in front of me now. I'm just going to read you the 15 songs that they felt were the inspiration for their censorship campaign. And to make matters even more hilarious, they even gave a reason based on the not musical content, but lyrical content of the songs that they felt them to be worthy of censorship. So, number one is the song Darling Nikki by Prince, and they don't like the lyrics because it talks about sex and masturbation, particularly a lyric that they read all of the time about Darling Nikki masturbating with a magazine in a hotel lobby. Um, there's a great joke in there. It's like, a man goes to the doctor's office. The doc goes, "You've got to stop masturbating." And the guy goes, "Why? Is it bad for me?" The doctor said, "No, it's disturbing the other people in the waiting room." There you go. Number two, Sheena Easton, Sugar Walls. Sheena Easton was such a middle of the road singer, but they kept harping on about that. And they don't like it because it is a metaphor for the human vagina. Next, I told you this is going to be funny. Next is Judas Priest, Eat Me Alive. And the funniest part about this is that they considered a lyric from Rob Halford, a gay man all his life, to be something that would negatively influence heterosexual kids into heterosexual sexual activities. So they really missed the boat on that one. Then a song by a band that really hasn't stood the test of time. This is actually a singer, a Canadian singer, Vanity, and the song was Strap On Robbie Baby. And they didn't like it because it's sex in its lyrics. Next, the song Bastard by Motley Crue, and they don't like the language and they consider it violent. And if you think the guys in Motley Crue are violent, they all wear makeup, by the way. Just go out to the streets of LA today. You'll be begging for the comparative safety of the 1980s when Motley Crue were strutting about in high heels on Sunset Boulevard. AC/DC, let me put my love into you. Well, AC/DC does many things, but metaphor isn't one of them. They're a very direct band. They don't like that. Next is Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It. And they said the song is violent. There is no violence in the song. It's a song about, self belief. It's a song about sticking it to the man. And they didn't like the video. That's another thing that Frank Zappa, who was the leading hero against this PMRC crusade, he said that they talk about lyrics, but the presentation is all bundled up in video, which is a distinct art form from lyrics and music. And as Dee Snider, who another great hero of the anti-censorship movement against the PMRC, he said, look, the music video is based on the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoons, where people get exploded and fall off cliffs, but they always, land on their feet eventually. It's very funny. funny. So that offended them too. And next, Madonna, Dress You Up. They don't like it because it's about sex. All of her songs are. Then you have WASP, Animal Fuck Like a Beast. Well, better than an animal fucking like a human, you would think. But okay, so the zoo activities are banned. Def Leppard, High and Dry, Saturday Night. They don't like it because it is supposedly about drugs and alcohol. But then again, the commercials on CNN and other dying news networks of today, most of those are funded by pharmaceutical commercials selling drugs that are, in most cases, I would say, as or more dangerous than the drugs that you get from a man behind the bushes. And as for alcohol, well, it's still legal to drink the last time I checked. So they didn't like that. Then there's Merciful Fate with the song Into the Coven, which is about the occult, the kind that John Podesta and Hillary Clinton are interested in. I don't know. You'll have to ask them. Next, Black Sabbath trashed drug and alcohol use. Well, that was from a Black Sabbath album, that the one that had Ian Gillan on it. There's a lot funnier stuff you could say about that than the lyrics. God bless them all. Venom, Possessed. Again, the occult. We know what some of these politicians get up to at the Skull and Bones Society and at the Bohemian Grove. Maybe we should look into that. And finally, Cyndi Lauper, a song about female masturbation, because that's actually two songs about female masturbation. I guess girls are the ones who want to have fun after all. So those are the Filthy 15, but they ended up attacking lots of musicians. Prince was always one that they had their sights on because his lyrics are very laden with innuendo and with explicit sexual references. But again, it's his constitutional right to sing about it, and it's people's constitutional and commercial right to buy and enjoy his music, but not according to the PMRC. Now, throughout the history of censorship, various devious and disingenuous techniques are used to pull the wool over the people's eyes, to bamboozle you, as Malcolm X would have said. And one of the things that they always talk about is the children. Now, children have a lot of problems that they face in the modern world. It's gotten worse since the 1980s, not better. They're entering a world where, unless things get better soon, economic opportunities are far less than their parents' generation. Major issue, children need a place to live. I mean, if you live in a society where you work hard and aren't able to have a place of your own in which to live, something about the economic model is skewed. It's not a free market, it's a rigged market. I support the free market, but that is a rigged market. So that's an issue. The real issue of, the foods that children eat, they're pumping all sorts of poisons into the foods. There's chemicals in the water. There actually are. And that's a bad thing. Education is very lacking. People are now graduating school, unable to read and write, unable to do basic, addition and subtraction. Perhaps equally, if not more worryingly, they are leaving school without a skill. They're not able to be a coder or a mechanic or an engineer or all of the real life things that we need. And that's why I think, trade schools are more important to society as a whole than Harvard. But this is the world that kids, young people are facing. And again, it wasn't as bad in the 80s, but, there was deindustrialization in parts of the US Midwest, and that was a bad thing. And so, there's always more important things going on than lyrics, because lyrics are just art, and art cannot hurt you. Art cannot hurt you. Poetry, movies, music, plays, photography, sculpture cannot hurt you. You could always make a fictional movie about a sculpture that comes to life and hurts you. But again, that is fiction, and fiction cannot hurt you. But these PMRC people operated under the totally objectively false theory that somehow art, and in this case music or music video, depending on what day Tipper Gore woke out of the bed, are somehow very bad for you, the way that, let's say, fluoride in the water is bad for you. I'm so going to lose this channel. It's okay. Follow me on X, because speaking of free speech, Elon is very for free speech. Now, X isn't perfect, and I actually kind of feel sorry for Elon, because there are sinister forces from the commercial sector and from the nonprofit and from the government sector across the world that are trying to force him to censor people. And he's fighting the good fight. So I'm a fan. So yeah, you can always find me there, Adam's Music Box, in case I'm telling a bit too much truth for the great googly moogly. But back to the lecture at hand. So these people, pardon me, choking on my own truth. They hide behind children, but in reality, they want to censor grown people. They want to prohibit people who want access to and want to purchase certain art forms of their choosing from doing so, and they want to ruin the lives and livelihoods of musicians who produce art that they don't like, which is very, very sinister. If you don't like something that someone's doing, don't buy it. No one is forcing you to buy it. No one is forcing you to listen to it. But it was very dastardly. They always start with kids, but it never stops with kids. And in any case, the role of protecting kids is the family. If they're a religious family, you could say that the church has that extended role as well. But the government's role isn't to do that. The government's role is, to police the streets, something that they're increasingly bad at doing. It's to make sure the economy doesn't get worse than the government is making it. I believe in the free market, not the rigged market. But there you go. That's what they did. And what ended up happening was something very, very devious. Before we get to that, though, let's look at why this began when it began. It began in 1985 because the record labels, who are no angels in their own right, they wanted the government to impose a blank tape tax, which would make the cost of blank tapes more expensive. Why did they want to do this? Well, because those same children that you claim to want to protect were engaging in a relatively innocent hobby of pressing record on their tape deck and recording songs off the radio or from their friend's LP or from another tape that they had brought over. Yeah, I know, but they weren't doing it for commercial purposes. They were just kids being kids. Those people that you thought you were trying to protect. But no, they wanted to tax people because of this. And I mean, look at how Napster, destroyed them, and they destroyed themselves by going off to Napster. I have several videos about that very subject. So anyway, the record industry wanted something from the government, and the government said, okay, well, it takes two to tango. And so the people who formed this group just happened to be not the wives of a butcher, a sailor, or a candlestick maker. They were the wives of senators, major senators, ambitious senators. The leading wife of the senator involved, Al Gore, he became a vice president and came very close to becoming the president. I would say that counts as an ambitious fellow. So Tipper Gore led the charge along with the others, and they ended up hiring a spokesmouth called Candy Stroud, not the most, no relation to Albert Einstein. She's never been accused of that. They hired her to go out and do their propaganda for them. And again, they mixed their messages. Are they really concerned about the lyrics? Are they concerned about the album covers? Are they concerned about the music videos? They truly wanted to get rid of it all, but it became a thing because of the record labels begging the government, begging Congress to do something about this tax. And they smelled blood and they pounced. And so what ended up happening is that they had congressional hearings. They were Senate committee hearings about this subject in the summer of 1985. And the people that testified on behalf of freedom in terms of opposing the censorship ways of the PMRC, there was Frank Zappa, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, and John Denver. Frank Zappa brought up important constitutional points, philosophical points about liberty, sociological and anthropological points about the responsibility of individuals and families, ideas about limited government, and ideas about the fact that this will have a negative economic effect on artists by essentially stigmatizing them for things they may or in many cases may not have done. They talked about wanting to put warning labels on the albums. Walmart then came out and said, well, we won't even rack albums that have the warning labels, which again, it's economically harmful to people. And who is to say that Tipper Gore and her friends know what lyrics are objectionable? Because what's objectionable to her might be perfectly fine to someone else. What's perfectly fine to me might be objectionable to the other person. So again, who is a centralized power to make pseudo objective decisions about the merits or character of various lyrics? It's preposterous. It's disgusting. And so Zappa made those points. Similar points were made by Dee Snider, who was very eloquent. He came dressed, in a tank top with his, long dyed hair and the whole shebang. He didn't have the lipstick on, but, he made the point. But he delivered a very eloquent and well-reasoned speech. And John Denver came, and people thought, Frank Zappa's known for pushing musical and lyrical boundaries. Twisted Sister were a popular sort of hard rock group at the time. John Denver's music was much more mainstream. You could even call it middle of the road. I'm not to knock him. He's a wonderful singer-songwriter. But he complained from the point of view that government is in no position to analyze the artistic merits of lyrics. And he pointed to an instance where his song Rocky Mountain High was banned from some radio stations because they thought that he was singing about being high on drugs. Now, he was singing about being high up in the Rocky Mountains and what a beautiful place he found it to be. There you go. Donny Osmond, well, he didn't appear before the Senate, was another sort of squeaky clean artist who gave interviews about this subject and said that it would actually force mainstream artists to become more raunchy with their lyrics because the young kids would see these warning labels as a badge of coolness. They wouldn't want to buy the edited version. They wouldn't want to buy albums that don't have this label. So again, it divided music unnecessarily between the cool and the uncool. And again, who is this organization? Who is the government? Who is the music industry on a voluntary basis? Who the hell is anyone to judge the merits of an artist? That's really between the artist and the ear of the beholder. That's at least how it should be. Now, many songs were subsequently written about censorship because of this. There was Banned in the USA by Two Live Crew. There was Freedom of Speech, Just Watch What You Say by Ice-T. So many different examples, the best of which was an entire album dedicated to this, Frank Zappa Meets the Mothers of Prevention, complete with sound bites from the Senate committee hearing. An excellent album. I really, really think you should check it out. But the PMRC was always a sinister organization because they sought to take away the freedom of artists to create their art without being interfered with through government or through a proxy of government. And they were equally effrontery to the liberty of the music listener and music consumer, who should not have this government or, again, government adjacent gatekeeper keeping people from listening to whatever they want. Music should be more accessible, not less. And Frank Zappa actually had good advice. Obviously, for small children, it's all obviously up to the parents what they listen to, even though I agree with Zappa that lyrics are fiction. And even just because you're listening to a song about disgusting behavior, that doesn't mean you're going to act it out. In fact, to paraphrase Zappa, it's a very good chance to educate people about the dangers of things like venereal diseases and other things like that. And I would go a step further and say it's also a good chance to educate kids about the importance of impulse control. The difference between a sane adult and a child on the one hand, or an insane adult on the other hand, is that a sane grown-up person has something called impulse control. We can get angry without killing someone. We can get disappointed without killing ourselves. I'm so going to get censored. In other words, you can have negative emotional experiences without acting in a negative way to yourself or to others. And with music, I mean, most people, even who aren't all the way there mentally, don't act things out in songs. But if they do, that's not a sign that there's something wrong with the music or lyrics. It's a sign that someone has very real mental problems that should be dealt with, either through compassion or maybe in a clinical way. I'm not really for that, but you know what I mean. It should be dealt with. Some people need help. That doesn't mean that we should censor the world, because some people who have a few screws loose or for whatever reason aren't able to handle that. But for the majority of people, it's all fine. And a perfect example is Japan has all sorts of heavy metal music and all sorts of pornography, which again don't necessarily approve of, but it's part of it's what they have it in Japan. And Japan is a very safe society because the cultural institutions and the families and the anthropological environment has led to a society with very high impulse control. And therefore, while Tokyo is very densely crowded, it's one of the safest big cities in the world. Again, why not have a Senate committee hearing on that rather than on censorship? Why? It's because, in the words of Frank Zappa, we're dumb all over, a little ugly on the side. Now, those are opportunities that arise from these albums. Because even if you in the '80s, let alone today, were to prohibit your kid from listening to a certain a record, his friend is going to have it. You'll hear some of it on the radio. And if your goal as a parent is to shelter your kid from information rather than rationally explaining the difference between various behaviors and the consequences thereof, your child's going to eventually be out in the real world where you cannot always protect them from the consequences of the things going on around them. Information is vital. Information is the key. And if a silly song that comes on, about some lady, flicking the bean in a hotel lobby, so be it. Who cares? But, freedom is something that cannot ever be compromised. The minute you compromise over your freedom, you have lost everything. Freedom is the most important gift that we have, and we have to guard it constantly. So farewell, PMRC. It is no more, but unfortunately, its progeny have spawned like maggots, and we need to be on guard. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.